Have you ever felt too much, too deep, too intense, too aware of everything around you, like you're walking through life with your nerves exposed? You're not broken, you're not weak. You might simply be a highly sensitive person. In a world that often confuses sensitivity for fragility, many HSPs spend their lives apologizing for how they feel, toning down who they are, and questioning why everything seems to affect them more than others. But what if those very traits, the ones that make you feel like an outsider, are actually your greatest strengths? In this video, we explore the hidden struggles only highly sensitive people truly understand, not as flaws, but as natural responses to a world that doesn't always know how to hold someone who feels deeply. Let's begin. Number 1. The weight of sensitivity. A deeper look. Imagine this. You walk into a room and the energy shifts. Conversations feel sharper, emotions run deeper, and even the smallest gesture seems to carry more weight than usual. For some, these moments pass unnoticed. But for you, someone who feels everything with an intensity that borders on overwhelming, they linger long after the moment has passed. If this sounds familiar, you may be part of the small but significant group known as highly sensitive people, HSPs. This isn't about being dramatic or overly emotional. It's about perceiving and processing life in a way that sets you apart from the majority. It means noticing the subtle shift in someone's voice before they speak, feeling the tension in a crowded space before anyone else does, and experiencing joy, sorrow, and everything in between with a depth that others might never fully grasp. But here's the paradox. What makes HSPs so attuned to the world also makes them vulnerable to its pressures. Every sound, every glance, every word carries meaning beyond what most people register. And while this heightened sensitivity can be a gift, leading to deep empathy, creativity, and insight, it also comes with unique challenges. The same trait that allows you to see beauty where others don't also makes you more prone to exhaustion, overstimulation, and emotional fatigue. In a world that often values speed, efficiency, and resilience above all else, being highly sensitive can sometimes feel like carrying an invisible burden. So, if you've ever felt misunderstood, overwhelmed by your surroundings, or simply too much for those around you, you're not alone. This is the reality for many HSPs. And yet, despite the struggles, there is immense value in this way of being. By understanding the unique experiences of highly sensitive people, we can begin to appreciate the richness they bring to the world, and find ways to navigate the challenges without losing the essence of who they are. Number 2. The need for rest, a biological imperative picture. Sarah wakes up groggy, her mind sluggish and her body heavy with fatigue. She had only managed 5 hours of sleep the night before, thanks to a restless mind racing with thoughts and a lingering sense of unease. As she drags herself through her morning routine, she notices how sharp the sunlight feels against her eyes, how loud the clinking of dishes in the kitchen sounds, and how irritable even the simplest interactions seem to make her. By midday, she's already drained, struggling to focus on work and longing for the solitude of her bed. To many, this might seem like an off day, but for Sarah, a highly sensitive person, HSP, this is a common reality when she doesn't get enough rest. For HSPs, sleep isn't just a luxury, it's a biological necessity. Research suggests that their nervous systems process sensory information more deeply, making them more susceptible to overstimulation. This heightened awareness doesn't shut off at night. It continues working overtime, analyzing, reflecting, and absorbing everything from the day's interactions to environmental stimuli. As a result, HSPs need more time to recharge, allowing their minds and bodies to reset. Without adequate sleep, they become increasingly reactive, emotionally fragile, and mentally exhausted. Even minor stressors that others might shrug off, like a tense conversation or a sudden change in plans, can feel disproportionately overwhelming. The consequences of sleep deprivation extend beyond mere tiredness. Studies show that HSPs experience stronger emotional responses to negative stimuli when fatigued, which means a frustrating comment from a coworker or a stressful email can trigger a deeper emotional reaction than usual. Their brains are wired to take in more information, analyze it more thoroughly, and respond with greater emotional depth. When deprived of rest, this natural tendency becomes a liability rather than an asset. They may struggle with decision-making, feel easily overwhelmed by their surroundings, and find themselves reacting more intensely to both positive and negative experiences. This isn't just about needing an extra hour of sleep. It's about recognizing that HSPs function differently. While the average person might power through a busy day on minimal rest, an HSP's system requires more downtime to maintain balance. Without it, they risk burnout, anxiety, and a diminished ability to cope with daily stressors. Understanding this need isn't a sign of weakness. It's a recognition of the unique way highly sensitive people interact with the world. It's about honoring their biology rather than forcing them to conform to a standard that wasn't built with them in mind. Number 3. Silence over stimulus, the sensory threshold of HSPs. Imagine stepping into a bustling city street during rush hour. The honking cars, flashing neon signs, overlapping conversations, and the constant movement of people pressing in from all sides. For most, this environment might be mildly chaotic but manageable. But for a highly sensitive person, HSP, it can feel like an assault on the senses. Now picture this. Instead of navigating a city, an HSP walks into a packed concert venue. The bass thumps relentlessly, lights flash in rapid succession, and voices blend into an indistinct roar. Within minutes, their heart begins to race, their breathing quickens, and a wave of discomfort washes over them. They feel trapped, overwhelmed, and desperate to escape. This isn't just a dislike of loud music or crowded spaces. It's a physiological response rooted in the way their brain processes sensory input. HSPs have a lower threshold for external stimulation, meaning that environments filled with noise, bright lights, strong smells, or excessive activity can quickly push them past their comfort zone. Unlike others who can filter out background noise or tune into conversation selectively, HSPs absorb everything simultaneously. They notice the hum of fluorescent lights, the scent of perfume clinging to someone nearby, the subtle shift in tone when someone speaks, each detail processed with equal intensity. In a setting like a concert or festival, where stimulation is amplified, this sensory overload becomes unbearable. What others might describe as an exciting, immersive experience feels like an exhausting, near-panic-inducing ordeal for an HSP. This aversion isn't a matter of preference, it's a survival mechanism. When an HSP enters a high-stimulation environment, their nervous system reacts as though under threat. Adrenaline surges, cortisol levels rise, and their fight-or-flight response kicks in, not because they're in actual danger, but because their brain interprets the sheer volume of sensory input as a potential hazard. Over time, repeated exposure to such situations without relief can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea. That's why many HSPs instinctively avoid places like clubs, sports events, or large gatherings, not out of social anxiety or disinterest, but as a necessary act of self-preservation. Understanding this reality is crucial. When an HSP declines an invitation to a lively event, they aren't being antisocial or difficult, they're protecting their well-being. Recognizing and respecting this need for quieter, more controlled environments allows HSPs to engage with the world on their own terms, ensuring they can thrive without constantly battling the effects of overstimulation. Number 4, the emotional roller coaster, carrying the weight of others. Let's paint a scene. Jordan is at work, sitting in a meeting where a colleague delivers unexpected criticism. Though the feedback isn't directed at him, he feels his chest tighten, his breath shallow, and a wave of embarrassment wash over him, as if he were the one being reprimanded. Later that day, he sees a friend post something heartfelt on social media, an expression of grief over a lost loved one, and he finds himself unable to shake the sadness. He replays the words in his head, imagining the pain his friend must be feeling, until his own mood darkens. By evening, he's exhausted, not from any physical exertion, but from carrying the emotional weight of everyone around him throughout the day. This is the reality for many highly sensitive people, HSPs. Their emotional radar is always on, picking up signals that others might miss or dismiss. They don't just observe emotions, they absorb them. Empathy isn't just a trait for HSPs, it's a lived experience, one that can leave them feeling drained, unsettled, or even physically unwell after prolonged exposure to intense emotions. Unlike those who can compartmentalize feelings or distance themselves from distressing situations, HSPs internalize what they witness. A friend's frustration becomes their own, a stranger's sadness lingers in their thoughts, and even fictional characters' struggles can feel deeply personal. The reason behind this lies in the neurological makeup of HSPs. Studies suggest that their brains show increased activity in regions associated with emotional processing, particularly the mirror neuron system, which plays a key role in understanding and responding to others' emotions. This means that when someone else is hurting, an HSP doesn't just recognize the pain intellectually, they feel it viscerally. It's as if they're standing in another person's shoes, experiencing their joy, sorrow, or fear with striking clarity. While this heightened sensitivity fosters deep connections and profound compassion, it also means that HSPs are constantly navigating an emotional landscape shaped by those around them. Over time, this dynamic can lead to emotional exhaustion. Imagine walking through a room where everyone's emotions are turned up to full volume. You hear every whisper of disappointment, every flicker of anxiety, every surge of anger. Most people learn to filter out the noise, but for an HSP, the emotional bandwidth is always open, leaving little room for respite. Without intentional boundaries or moments of solitude to recalibrate, the cumulative effect can be overwhelming. This is why many HSPs seek quiet spaces, retreat into nature, or carve out alone time. It's not isolation, but a necessary act of self-care to prevent emotional burnout. Number 5. Reading between the lines. The gift and burden of social perception. Consider this scenario. Alex is at a dinner party with friends when a seemingly casual joke is made. Everyone laughs except for one person, let's call him Marcus, who tenses slightly, offering a tight smile before looking away. Most people would brush this off, assuming Marcus is just having an off night. But Alex notices the micro-expression, the slight hesitation in Marcus's posture, and the way his voice changes subtly when he responds. Hours later, Alex still can't stop thinking about it. Was the joke offensive? Did it touch on something deeper? Could Marcus be upset? These questions loop in Alex's mind, replaying the interaction over and over, dissecting every possible nuance. This is the reality for many highly sensitive people, HSPs. They possess an uncanny ability to read between the lines, detecting emotions, intentions, and unspoken tensions that others might miss. Where most people rely on surface-level cues, HSPs pick up on subtleties, tone shifts, fleeting facial expressions, body language nuances that reveal hidden layers of meaning. It's not just about being observant, it's about seeing the full spectrum of human emotion playing out in real time. This skill makes HSPs incredibly perceptive friends, partners, and colleagues, often able to diffuse conflicts before they escalate or offer support when someone is struggling silently. However, this heightened awareness comes with a cost. Because HSPs process so much information, they often find themselves overanalyzing social interactions, searching for patterns or meanings that may not exist. A simple exchange can spiral into an endless cycle of speculation. Was that glance dismissive? Did they mean something different by that remark? Could I have said something better? This mental replaying of conversations can lead to anxiety, second-guessing, and a tendency to personalize interactions that weren't necessarily meant to be taken so deeply. In some cases, HSPs may even misinterpret neutral behavior as negative, reading rejection or disapproval where none was intended. The root of this tendency lies in the HSP's neurology. Studies indicate that their brains exhibit increased activity in regions responsible for emotional processing and attention to detail. This means they naturally absorb more data from their surroundings, including the emotional undertones of social exchanges. While this trait allows them to form deep, meaningful connections, it also leaves them vulnerable to overthinking and emotional exhaustion. Learning to strike a balance, recognizing when to trust their instincts versus when to let go, is essential for HSPs to navigate social dynamics without becoming consumed by them. Number 6. The visceral response to violence. A deeply felt discomfort. Picture this. Mia is watching a movie with friends when a graphic scene unfolds. Blood splatters across the screen. A character screams in agony, and the camera zooms in on every gruesome detail. Her friends react with excitement, commenting on how realistic the effects look, but Mia feels her stomach twist. She looks away, her pulse quickens, and she suddenly feels nauseous. Even after the scene ends, the images linger in her mind, replaying involuntarily, making it impossible to enjoy the rest of the film. She apologizes and excuses herself, needing to step outside for fresh air. For most of her life, Mia thought this reaction was extreme, even irrational, until she realized that her response wasn't just about disliking violence, it was about how deeply she felt it. Highly sensitive people, HSPs, often experience a visceral, almost physical reaction to depictions of violence, whether in movies, news reports, or even violent discussions. It's not just a matter of finding gore unpleasant, it's about how profoundly their nervous system registers and processes these images. Studies suggest that HSPs have heightened activity in brain regions linked to empathy and emotional processing, meaning that when they witness suffering, even if it's fictional, they experience it with startling intensity. This isn't limited to visual depictions either. Hearing about real-life atrocities, listening to detailed descriptions of cruelty, or even engaging in heated debates about violence can trigger similar discomfort. This sensitivity isn't about being weak or overly emotional. It's about how deeply HSPs internalize what they perceive. Unlike others who can detach from disturbing content, HSPs often feel as if they are personally experiencing the pain. Their bodies react accordingly. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, and adrenaline surges, creating a physical manifestation of distress. This response isn't just psychological, it's physiological. The brain interprets the imagery as a threat, activating the same survival mechanisms it would use in real danger. Over time, repeated exposure to such content can lead to lasting emotional fatigue, anxiety, and even trauma-like symptoms. Understanding this reaction is crucial. When an HSP avoids horror films, declines to watch violent news coverage, or expresses discomfort discussing certain topics, it's not out of ignorance or avoidance, it's an act of self-preservation. Respecting these boundaries isn't about coddling, it's about acknowledging that their sensitivity is a fundamental part of their neurological makeup, shaping how they engage with the world. Number 7. Lingering pain. Why letting go feels impossible. Think of Maya, a woman who ended a 3-year relationship 6 months ago. On paper, the breakup was mutual. Both agreed it was time to move on. But for Maya, closure remains elusive. She replays old messages, wonders if she could have done something differently, and finds herself gripped by waves of sadness at unexpected moments. A song, a scent, or even a passing remark from a friend can send her spiraling back into the emotional aftermath. She knows logically that the relationship ran its course, yet letting go feels like trying to release sand through clenched fists. No matter how hard she tries, pieces slip through, reminding her of what's gone. For highly sensitive people, HSPs, emotional wounds don't fade as quickly as they do for others. While many can process a painful experience, extract lessons from it, and move forward, HSPs tend to dwell in the emotional residue far longer. This isn't about being stuck in the past or unwilling to heal. It's about how deeply they feel in the first place. Because they experience emotions with greater intensity, they also retain them for extended periods. A harsh word from years ago might still sting. A past betrayal might resurface unexpectedly, and even minor disappointments can echo in their minds like distant thunder. The reason for this lies in the way HSPs process experiences. Studies show that their brains exhibit heightened activity in regions responsible for emotional memory and introspection. This means that when they encounter something emotionally charged, whether it's a romantic breakup, a professional failure, or even a fleeting disagreement, they imprint those feelings more strongly. Unlike others who can compartmentalize pain and move on, HSPs often relive these moments, analyzing them from multiple angles, searching for meaning, and questioning whether they could have handled things differently. This deep reflection can be a strength, fostering growth and self-awareness, but it can also trap them in cycles of rumination, making it harder to release past hurts. Additionally, HSPs tend to form attachments more easily, forming strong emotional bonds with people, places, and even ideas. When those connections are severed, whether through loss, change, or conflict, the impact is more pronounced. The brain treats emotional separation similarly to physical pain, and for an HSP, that sensation lingers. They don't just remember the event, they feel it, as if it's happening all over again. Healing, then, isn't just about moving forward. It's about learning to coexist with memories that refuse to fade quietly. Number 8. The strain of change, navigating the unknown. Picture this. Daniel has been going to the same coffee shop every morning for the past 2 years. He knows exactly where to sit, what to order, and how the barista will greet him. One day, the shop closes for renovations, and he's forced to find a new place. He walks into a different cafe, scanning the unfamiliar layout, unsure of where to stand in line. The menu is more elaborate than he's used to, and the barista asks him questions he hadn't prepared for. His heart starts to beat faster, his thoughts clouded with uncertainty. He orders something he thinks he'll like, but by the time he sits down, he feels oddly unsettled, as if something essential in his routine has been disrupted. For many highly sensitive people, HSPs, change, no matter how small, can feel like a disruption to their entire equilibrium. While others might adapt seamlessly to new environments, HSPs often require more time to process unfamiliar settings. Their heightened awareness means they absorb every detail: the lighting, the temperature, the background noise, the way people move around them. Unlike individuals who can enter a new space and immediately adjust, HSPs unconsciously gather vast amounts of sensory information, analyzing each element before they can feel at ease. This meticulous processing, while valuable in many contexts, can make transitions feel overwhelming rather than exciting. Moreover, HSPs often develop deep attachments to routines because they provide a sense of control and predictability. Familiarity offers comfort, allowing them to conserve mental and emotional energy. When that structure is altered, whether it's a job change, a move to a new city, or even rearranging furniture in their home, they must expend additional effort to reorient themselves. This adjustment period can leave them feeling drained, anxious, or even physically uncomfortable. The unpredictability of change forces them to remain in a state of heightened alertness, constantly assessing their surroundings for potential stressors. This sensitivity to transition isn't just about discomfort, it's rooted in the way HSPs process the world. Studies indicate that their brains exhibit increased activity in regions responsible for attention to detail and emotional regulation. This means they don't just notice changes, they feel them on a deeper level. A minor shift in routine can trigger a cascade of emotional and physiological responses, from mild irritation to full-blown overwhelm. Understanding this dynamic is crucial, as it reframes what might appear as resistance to change as a natural response to an environment that demands more from their already sensitive nervous system. Number 9. The weight of criticism, a personal attack, not just feedback. Let's imagine this. Clara presents a project at work, proud of the effort she put into it. However, her supervisor points out a few areas that need improvement, suggesting alternative approaches and adjustments. The feedback is constructive, meant to refine the work, not discredit it. Yet, as soon as the words hit her ears, Clara feels a sharp pang in her chest. Her face flushes, her hands tremble slightly, and she fights the urge to apologize, even though she knows she did nothing wrong. She spends the rest of the day replaying the conversation, dissecting every word, wondering if she failed, if she disappointed her team, or if she's fundamentally not good enough. For highly sensitive people, HSPs, criticism, no matter how gentle or well-intended, often lands like a personal blow rather than a tool for growth. While others might receive feedback, acknowledge its validity, and move forward, HSPs tend to internalize it on a deeper level. Their heightened emotional responsiveness means that even the slightest critique can trigger a flood of self-doubt, shame, or defensiveness. This isn't about fragility or an inability to handle tough situations. It's about how their nervous system processes external evaluation. Studies suggest that HSPs exhibit increased activity in brain regions linked to emotional processing and self-reflection, making them more attuned to the nuances of interpersonal feedback. Conflict, too, feels more intense for HSPs. While some people thrive in debate, using disagreements as opportunities to sharpen their arguments, HSPs often find themselves emotionally drained by even minor disputes. They don't just hear the words spoken, they feel the underlying tension, the emotional charge behind every statement. Raised voices, even if not directed at them, can feel threatening. A disagreement might linger in their minds for days, replaying endlessly as they analyze every angle, wondering if they contributed to the discord or if they should have responded differently. This sensitivity to criticism and conflict isn't a flaw, it's a byproduct of their deep emotional awareness. HSPs are naturally empathetic, intuitive, and conscientious, which means they care deeply about how their actions affect others. When faced with disapproval, they don't just think about the task at hand. They question their worth, their competence, and their place within the group dynamic. Learning to separate feedback from self-worth is a crucial skill for HSPs, helping them navigate professional and personal relationships without letting criticism erode their confidence. Number 10. The pressure paradox. Why deadlines feel like traps. Picture this. Ethan is given a week to complete a major project at work. For most people, a deadline provides structure, a clear endpoint that helps prioritize tasks and manage time efficiently. But for Ethan, the countdown begins immediately, accompanied by a rising tide of anxiety. Each passing day feels heavier, as if the pressure itself is closing in. He wants to give the project his best effort, but the looming deadline clouds his ability to focus. He worries about missing details, making mistakes, or falling short of expectations. Instead of motivating him, the time constraint amplifies his stress, turning what should be a manageable task into an overwhelming burden. For highly sensitive people, HSPs, pressure doesn't just add urgency, it adds weight. While some individuals thrive under tight deadlines, using them as fuel to push through obstacles, HSPs often experience the opposite effect. Their nervous systems are wired to process information deeply, weighing possibilities, considering outcomes, and seeking perfection in their work. This thoroughness is a strength in environments that allow for thoughtful deliberation, but it becomes a liability when time is limited. When forced to rush, HSPs feel as though they're compromising quality, sacrificing depth for speed. The very thing that makes them detail-oriented and insightful becomes a source of distress when time constraints demand haste. Beyond the cognitive strain, there's a physiological component to this struggle. Studies suggest that HSPs exhibit heightened sensitivity to external stressors, including time pressure. Their bodies react more intensely to perceived threats, triggering elevated cortisol levels and an activated fight-or-flight response. This means that when an HSP is under pressure, they don't just feel stressed, they experience it physically. Their heart races, their mind goes blank, and their ability to think clearly diminishes. Unlike others who can compartmentalize stress and push through, HSPs often find themselves paralyzed by it, unable to perform at their usual capacity when rushed. This challenge extends beyond work-related deadlines. Everyday situations that require quick decisions, such as speaking in front of a group, handling an unexpected problem, or even choosing between multiple options in a short time frame, can trigger similar reactions. The pressure to act fast contradicts the HSP's natural inclination to process deeply, leading to frustration and self-doubt. Understanding this dynamic is crucial, as it reframes what might appear as inefficiency or indecisiveness as a natural response to an environment that prioritizes speed over depth. Number 11. Boundaries and compassion. When empathy becomes a trap, consider this. Rachel receives a text from a close friend asking if she can house sit for the weekend. Normally, she'd say no. She needs time to recharge, and the request interrupts her carefully planned schedule. But as she reads the message, she pictures her friend's situation, working late, overwhelmed with responsibilities, genuinely counting on her help. Before she can talk herself out of it, she replies, "Sure." An hour later, she's already regretting the decision. She knows she should have said no, but the thought of disappointing her friend, of failing to be the supportive presence they expect, overrides her own needs. For highly sensitive people, HSPs, compassion is both a gift and a vulnerability. Their deep emotional awareness makes them exceptionally attuned to others' struggles, often sensing distress before it's even verbalized. This heightened empathy drives them to offer support, but it also makes it incredibly difficult to set firm boundaries. Unlike others who can comfortably decline requests without guilt, HSPs feel the emotional weight of saying no as acutely as if they were rejecting a part of themselves. They don't just understand someone's hardship intellectually, they feel it viscerally, as if the other person's disappointment, frustration, or sadness is their own. This dynamic creates a dangerous loop. Because HSPs are so responsive to others' emotions, they often become the go-to person for advice, emotional support, or last-minute favors. Friends, family members, and even co-workers come to rely on their kindness, knowing they are less likely to say no. Over time, this expectation solidifies into a pattern where the HSP continuously puts others' needs above their own, fearing that asserting boundaries will damage relationships or cause emotional harm. The result is a cycle of self-neglect, where the HSP's well-being takes a backseat to maintaining harmony in their interpersonal world. Compounding the issue is the fact that HSPs often struggle to identify when their own limits have been crossed. Their natural inclination is to absorb stress rather than express it, leading to a slow buildup of resentment, exhaustion, and emotional depletion. They may not even realize they are overwhelmed until they reach a breaking point. Learning to recognize their own needs and communicate them effectively is essential for HSPs to protect their emotional health without sacrificing their innate compassion. Number 12. The inner critic. When perfectionism feels like a curse. Imagine this. Marcos spent weeks preparing for a presentation at work. He rehearsed extensively, fine-tuned every slide, and anticipated every possible question. When the day arrived, he delivered his speech confidently, earning praise from his colleagues and superiors. Yet, as he walks back to his desk, all he can think about is the one moment when he hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, before answering a question. That single stumble replays in his mind, overshadowing everything else. He berates himself for not being flawless, convinced that his mistake was glaringly obvious to everyone, even though no one else noticed. By the end of the day, the initial satisfaction of a successful presentation has faded entirely, replaced by frustration and self-doubt. For highly sensitive people, HSPs, failure isn't just a setback, it's a deeply personal wound. While others might acknowledge a mistake, learn from it, and move forward, HSPs tend to internalize errors with an intensity that feels almost disproportionate. This isn't about being overly critical or lacking confidence, it's about how their brains process setbacks. Studies suggest that HSPs exhibit heightened activity in regions responsible for self-reflection and emotional processing, meaning they don't just recognize their mistakes, they feel them on a visceral level. A missed opportunity, a misplaced word, or a flawed execution isn't just a minor hiccup, it becomes a defining moment of inadequacy. This relentless self-criticism stems from their natural inclination toward depth and precision. HSPs tend to approach tasks with a level of care and attention to detail that others might not match. They want to do things right, not just adequately, but perfectly. Unfortunately, this pursuit of excellence often turns inward, leading them to hold themselves to impossibly high standards. When reality inevitably falls short of those expectations, the disappointment isn't just about the outcome. It's about the belief that they should have done better. This mindset can create a cycle of self-reproach, where even small missteps feel like monumental failures. Moreover, because HSPs are so attuned to the emotions of those around them, they often assume others are judging them just as harshly as they judge themselves. A fleeting pause in conversation, a slightly awkward moment, or a minor oversight can be interpreted as evidence of incompetence or unworthiness. Learning to separate objective reality from internalized criticism is crucial for HSPs to cultivate self-compassion and break free from the grip of their own expectations. Number 13. The necessity of solitude. Recharging the sensitive mind. Picture this. Olivia has spent the entire day surrounded by people, meetings at work, lunch with colleagues, and an evening gathering with friends. On the surface, she appears engaged, smiling, and sociable, but beneath the surface, she feels drained. Conversations that once energized her now feel exhausting, and every voice in the room seems to press against her like an invisible weight. By the time she gets home, she collapses onto the couch, craving silence. Even the soft hum of the television feels intrusive. She pulls on headphones, not to listen to music, but to block out the world entirely. Only in this quiet space does she finally exhale, allowing her body and mind to unwind. For highly sensitive people, HSPs, social interactions aren't just draining, they deplete their emotional and cognitive resources in a way that most people don't experience. While extroverts often gain energy from being around others, HSPs expend it. Their heightened sensitivity means they absorb more from every interaction. The subtle shifts in tone, the unspoken tensions in a room, the emotional undercurrents of a conversation. Unlike others who can engage socially without consequence, HSPs process every interaction deeply, often replaying conversations afterward, analyzing body language, and contemplating what was said or left unsaid. This constant intake of information leaves them in need of frequent solitude to recover. Solitude isn't just a preference for HSPs, it's a necessity. Alone time allows their nervous system to reset, giving them space to process their experiences without the added pressure of external stimuli. Without this reprieve, they become increasingly overwhelmed, irritable, and emotionally exhausted. Some may mistakenly interpret this need for space as aloofness or disinterest, but in reality, it's about self-preservation. The world bombards HSPs with sensory and emotional input, and without moments of quiet reflection, they risk burnout. Understanding and respecting this need for solitude isn't about isolating them. It's about recognizing that their way of recharging is different, and that honoring it allows them to engage more fully when they choose to be present. Number 14. The loneliness of misunderstanding. Feeling like an outsider. Consider this. James has always felt like he experiences life more deeply than those around him. When a friend jokes about a painful experience, James winces, unable to laugh along. When a coworker brushes off an emotional discussion, he feels dismissed. At family gatherings, he notices the subtle shifts in mood, the unspoken tensions, while others remain oblivious. Over time, he learns to mask his reactions, to nod along even when he doesn't agree, to keep his thoughts to himself rather than risk being seen as overly dramatic or difficult. Still, the loneliness lingers. He craves connection, but the people around him don't seem to understand the depth of his experiences. This is the reality for many highly sensitive people, HSPs. They live in a world that often misunderstands them. Because only about 15–20% of the population shares this trait, most people don't recognize it as a legitimate difference in perception. Instead, they interpret an HSP's sensitivity as weakness, overreaction, or indecisiveness. When an HSP cries at a sad movie, they're told they're too emotional. When they withdraw from a chaotic environment, they're labeled as antisocial. When they hesitate before making a decision, they're seen as insecure. These misinterpretations create a persistent sense of alienation, reinforcing the idea that something is wrong with them rather than acknowledging that they simply process the world differently. The misunderstanding runs deeper than individual interactions. It affects how society as a whole views sensitivity. In cultures that value toughness, efficiency, and resilience, traits like deep empathy, careful deliberation, and emotional depth are often undervalued. HSPs may be told to toughen up, stop overthinking, or not take things so seriously. These dismissals invalidate their experiences, making them feel like outsiders in a world that doesn't accommodate their needs. Over time, many HSPs learn to suppress their true selves, hiding their sensitivity to fit in, even though doing so comes at the cost of their emotional well-being. Without proper understanding, HSPs struggle to explain their experiences in a way that others truly grasp. They know they feel more, think more, and absorb more. But how do you convey that to someone who has never experienced the world this way? This disconnect leads to frustration, isolation, and a deep yearning for validation. Recognizing and accepting high sensitivity as a natural variation of human temperament is essential, not just for HSPs to feel understood, but for society to embrace the depth, insight, and compassion they bring to the world. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, do well to click like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more insightful video. And click the notification bell so you can be notified when next I post subsequent videos. See you next time. Bye.